for example, if I'm having a conflict with another person, right? It might be anyone in the workplace or family, friend group, anyone. In that situation, so how does that help me? Do I empathize with that person? Do I think that he's the same person as me? Because if I know that, okay, there is only one consciousness that's shining, that one light that's shining on both of us, there is that oneness, but we still feel different because, as you said, the mind, the knowledge, those things are different. So how do I react in that situation?
Yes. Vedanta does this thing about dividing the reality into two layers: Paramarthika, ultimate reality; Vyavaharika, transactional reality. Ultimate reality, we are all one reality, Brahman. Transactionally, we are different persons. Vedanta is very realistic. It exactly as it appears, it will say that yes, these are all different people. But what difference is there between the Vedantic person and the non-Vedantic person? The Vedantic person takes this difference, appearance of these different people, as a relative truth, not ultimate truth. Ultimate truth is there's one consciousness, and I am that one consciousness, and I am alone in all these people. So in one sense, the Vedantin knows they're all one with me. The Vedantin, you feel that sense of oneness with everybody. First, you start with that, the sense of oneness with everybody. Now come to the practical dealing with people. So you said conflict. Conflict arises because of lack of oneness. You may have the feeling of oneness, the other person may not have. The other person is just acting from his or her perceived set of interests. That I am this person, this is what I want. And then it leads to conflict with the other person. If you are Vedantic, you feel a sense, first of all, a sense of oneness with that person. And then you proceed to deal with the situation. How will you deal with it? You will deal with it with whatever steps are necessary. In some situation, it could be affection. In some situation, it could be firmness. But one test will be, you'll never be upset in any situation. Even if you're scolding a person, you'll still be serene within. And you'll be all sympathy for that person. See, just because we feel oneness with somebody doesn't mean that you are going to agree to anything and everything at the personal level. Because the demands are also coming from an uninformed, ignorant personal level. So you know what is good and what is bad for yourself as a person, a spiritual person, and for the other person also. And for the organization also. So you will do what is rational, what is necessary. Notice, after teaching all this oneness, Krishna to Arjuna tells him to fight.
Right. Mahabharata.
Mahabharata, yes. So the work that has to be done has to be done. After all, the work itself is Brahman. In the Bhagavad Gita, it says, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi Brahmagno Brahmanahutam Brahmevatena Gantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhina. It's not only in meditation, but also in action. Not only in studying and talking about Vedanta, but in the midst of action, in your office, in your community, in your family. When you're involved in action, you can still see Brahman everywhere in oneness. So the example is given of a Vedic fire sacrifice, where there are these wooden spoons with which they would put ahuti, the havan in the fire, Vedic fire. So it says Brahmarpanam, the spoon with which you are pouring into the fire, that spoon is Brahman. It's not a spoon, it's Brahman. Brahmagni, the fire, it's not a fire, it's Brahman. The priest who's pouring, it's not a priest, it's Brahman. What you are pouring, the ghee, the clarified butter, it's not ghee, it's Brahman. In this way, the one who sees Brahman in the midst of all actions, not by stopping actions and sitting in meditation, in the midst of all actions, one who sees Brahman, that person will attain Brahman.
You know, Nisargadatta Maharaj, who was an enlightened person, there's a story that basically someone told him that, you are Brahmgyani. And he said that, oh, why have you insulted me? I'm not Brahmgyani, I am Brahman. And that reminds me of that entire difference between knowing and being. Because I think whoever's listening has probably come to the stage where they feel that maybe now they can deal with conflicts, whether it's from the smallest conflict to heat waves, to being stuck in the traffic light, to bigger issues such as relationship issues, to traumas in life. But that whole aspect of knowing versus being, how to actually transition into that being.
Yes, that's a good question. I'll answer that at two levels. One is, the first and foremost, the practice level. So in spiritual life, we begin by knowing many things. whether it's the Bhakti Shastras which tell us about God and how to worship God and how to love God. But we've just known these things. We have read the stories and we have not yet started. Then there is the Yoga Shastras which tell us how to sit, how to breathe, how to withdraw our senses from the world, how to concentrate inside and focus and meditate and attain samadhi. But that's just, we have read the book, Yoga Sutras, and we have read about the practices. We haven't started yet. So this is the phase of knowing. And then you translate into being. Being means doing those things and making it part and parcel of our existence. Training the body, training the mind, developing the habits. So whether it's a bhakti practice, whether it's a yogic practice, or even physical hatha yoga, you can read a book on the asanas and pranayam and finish every book in the library, you still get no benefit at all until you actually do it. So the link between knowing and being is the doing. And in doing, what is crucial is repetition. It's a very simple point I'm making, but repetition is central to doing. It's not central to knowing. Once you know it, you know it. You don't have to keep repeating the knowing, but you have to keep repeating the doing. The doing sadhana takes repetition. Spiritual practice takes repetition. So that's one way of translating knowing into being. Take up a systematic course of practice. Whether it is hatha yoga, whether it is meditation, whether it is bhakti, systematic course of sadhana, which will translate that knowing into being. That's one answer. Advaita is where things get interesting, where knowing directly translates into being. Here in Advaita Vedanta, the problem is not knowing.
Yes.
And the solution is knowing. The solution is not further practice. In yoga, in bhakti, the problem is the lack of practice. It's not the lack of knowledge, the lack of practice. That's the problem. But in Advaita, it's the not knowing is the problem. And so the solution is knowing. In fact, in Advaita Vedanta, knowing and doing become the same. What's the practice in Advaita Vedanta? Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. You study it, that means you're knowing. You think about it, that means you're knowing. And then what you've thought about, stay with it until it becomes a fact. That is being. So knowledge translates directly into being there. I'm speaking in abstractions. Let me put it directly. You are Brahman. What is your being? What is my being? Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. That I do not know. Well, know it. However, there is a little bit of a wrinkle here, a little bit of a footnote to be added. People might say, sold. I will know it, and then I will realize I am Brahman. Yes, that's what Vedanta says. The only problem is it doesn't work. I know it. I've been reading so many books and listening to so many lectures, and I really have understood it to a little extent at least. But I don't think I am Brahman yet. I can't honestly say that. I understand that what the texts are telling me, but I don't feel that I am Brahman. Note, a classical Advaita teacher would tell us that you have not even understood yet. If you truly understand, you will realize that you are Brahman. There would be no gap between knowing and being. The problem is, the way of acting in the world does not only depend upon what we know or do not know. It depends upon our past conditioning. The way we have conditioned our mind and senses, behavior patterns. So even after we know some things, we still continue to behave in the old ways.
The samskaras.
Therefore, in Advaita Vedanta, to remove the problems which arise in spiritual life, there is a course of a kind of meditation called Nididhyasana, where what you have known, stay with that knowing until it becomes so real to you, you cannot behave in any other way. You will behave according to your realization that I am Brahman. Then the task is done. This is called assimilation. Assimilation. Vivekananda says, tell yourself again and again, I am that or I am he. Soham, I am that, aham brahmasmi. Till it tingles with every drop of your blood. Overcome this smallness. Overcome this weakness. I am limitless existence. I am not this little life. I am being, consciousness, bliss itself. I am not this body of flesh and blood. It's there, but I am not it. It's just a tiny expression of the truth that I am. Why should I be afraid? So tell yourself again and again until it tingles with every drop of your blood. Until it becomes the very life of your life. Then the job is done, then knowing has become being.
In the midst of problems, then you actually apply this and you keep on.
Correct. Shankaracharya actually says this. In the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there is a very ancient term for, that hearing, reasoning, meditating, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. This is a common term. That's also from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. But in that Upanishad, there's another set of terms for the same thing. Instead of hearing, instead of Shravana in Sanskrit, the word used is Pandityam, which means scholarship. One can see the link. Hearing, studying, scholarship. Okay, I get it. The second one is interesting. Instead of mananam, thinking over it, the word used is balyam. I'll explain what that means. And the third one, instead of nididhyasana, meditation, the word used is maunam, silence. That also maps. So instead of shravana, manana, nididhyasana, hearing, thinking, meditating, the other set of terms is pandityam, balyam, maunam, scholarship, balyam, whatever that is, and maunam, silence. Now this balyam, Shankaracharya explains there are two ways of interpreting this term. Balyam means the nature of a child. Bala means child. Or balyam means strength. Bala, the Sanskrit word bala means strength. Now these are two interpretations. And Shankaracharya takes the second one. What you just said, living in the midst of life, living that knowledge. So Shankaracharya says there, whatever knowledge you have gained from your study, try to take it out for a spin in the world. See how your mind is when troublesome situations arise. Can I use that knowledge? I am the witness consciousness. The problems are at body-mind level. I am the witness. And then does it calm down the mind? That knowledge. If you live your life on that strength, bala, then the next part, the Vedantic meditation, will be easy and enlightenment will be full-blown, which is called Jivan Mukti. So I'm just elaborating on what you said. Living that knowledge, that connects the knowing and the being.
And the last thing quickly that I want to touch upon, and that'll leave our audience intrigued for the next time, is that recently I've just started a little bit listening to Mundukya Karika by Gaudapada, and where he basically, in a way, says that this world, whatever we're seeing, is not real. You've mentioned a lot about that we know that dream is not real, but to still believe that this waking stage, like us talking right now, or the fact that I can touch this table here and I would get hurt by the material, that is not real. So if you can just briefly explain that.
Let's just take that example. We are talking here. Is this real or not real? What would Gaudapada say to that? If you knock yourself against the table and it hurts, ouch, it hurts. Is that real or not real? And whatever does it mean to say it's not real? What Gaudapada would say to that is, so you are sitting here and talking, right? Yes. And this is an experience, right? Yes. And the experience is nothing other, is entirely dependent on consciousness, right? Yes. Without consciousness, no experience. Now, are you a person talking, or are you consciousness? So basically, I'm consciousness. And in this body-mind person, I'm engaged in talking to another person, who's also, by the way, that same consciousness. Would you say that the consciousness is talking to another consciousness or another person? Does it make sense to say consciousness is talking? No, consciousness doesn't talk. Then what is the relationship of consciousness to talking? The talking and the person, they are appearances in consciousness. Consciousness is the reality in which an experience of being a person talking to another person is being experienced. That is the falsity. Let me run through it again.
Yes.
Our common sense approach is, we're sitting here and talking. Done. What's there to talk about? What's there to discuss here? It's so two people talking. It's common sense. Now Gaudapada would say, two people talking, right? Yes. Is it an experience? Yes. Two people talking is an experience? Yes. Experience not possible without consciousness? Yes. Then the experience is something that is experienced in consciousness. It's not that consciousness is talking, consciousness is one person, consciousness is another person. Now the two are talking to each other. No. Consciousness is just experiencing this whole thing, that two people are talking. So these two people talking isn't it an appearance in consciousness?
Right. So it's not like two body minds are talking.
Yes, right. So it's not that there is actually a physical body, in that there is a mental mind, in that there is a consciousness. Not like that. In one limitless awareness arises like a movie playing or a dream appearing, two people sitting and talking. Gaudapada asks, what's the reality here? Is the reality a table, or is it that I am seeing the table? Is that a better description? I am seeing the table. But I am seeing the table, is it possible without consciousness? No. So isn't it that consciousness is experiencing this, I am seeing a table? This is arising in consciousness. This arising nature of things is called unreality.
Just like in a movie, technically the actors, what they're doing is real, but in reality, it's not real. You're just watching a movie that's fake.
As far as the movie goes, yes, there are cops and robbers and there are car chases and space battles and everything. But really what's there? It's a screen and light and pictures. Therefore, we say it's a movie, it's not real. But it's almost the same thing here. As long as we keep consciousness out of the picture, yeah, there are bodies and there is mind, there is speech, there is interaction. But when we bring consciousness into the picture, which is there already in the picture itself is because of consciousness, then we realize all of these, like waves in an ocean, are arisings in consciousness. In that sense, Gaudapada says the world is unreal. It's empty in itself, but is actually in one sense full of consciousness. And the consciousness alone is appearing and is experiencing itself in all of these ways.
That's a wonderful explanation. And I just want to, before ending this podcast, just say that there's very few podcasts where I actually feel like this will really, really help the person watching. This is something that if people actually dive into and then they further study, this can eliminate their suffering and really bring light into their
mind. And it helps all of us, the person watching and the person talking, both of us. It's wonderful to dwell on this. In the Panchadashi, there is a description of what's the practice of this Advaita Vedanta. Yeah, I know you will say hearing, reasoning, meditating. But the author of Panchadashi, that Advaita text, he says, Tat kathanam tat chintanam, parasparam tat prabodhanam, etad eka paratvam hi brahmabhyasam vidurbhuta. What does that mean? Talking about it. Thinking about it, Brahman, one consciousness, Advaita Vedanta. Explaining to each other, parasparam tat prabodhanam, awakening each other. This one-pointedness about Brahman, eka paratvam, or this focus on the one reality, this is called the practice of Brahman, Brahmabhyasam. This is the practice of Advaita.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Swamiji, for being on the show. Thank you.